So you had a pretty interesting tweet earlier this week with a nice emoji image. I'll just describe it briefly for the people listening who can't see. So you've got an image of a guy on a bike that says coin voting, riding his bike nicely. Then you've got an image that says Premine with a guy sticking his little stick into the spokes of the wheels on his own. And then the last image is a guy falling off the bike, running around, broken his knee. Coin voting leads to centralization, Dan. What was your thinking behind this? How dare you think such thoughts, Dan?
I was trying to because I've always had to keep explaining this in the ways that I understand it, and I just thought that this was a pretty clear example of what is wrong with the majority of coin voting. It's not that coin voting is bad. It's just that sticking a Premine into the coin voting system is bad, and it just so happens that's what everyone does. So then everyone just says, "Oh, coin voting is bad." So I think Hive at least gives us an example of not sticking the wheel. But yeah, I thought this was a pretty cheeky way to get my point across.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great point, man. It really is sticking a stick in your spokes of your wheel of your bike, you know, and it's a great point because everyone is trying to say, oh, coin voting, we probably should move away. And it's interesting to see what the Bitcoiners have to say about it as well, because they're kind of neutral in this in some way, because they have a slightly different process and they vote with which nodes they operate, which version of the nodes they operate. But yeah, I mean, you see, you can't have a good coin voting process unless you've got a good decentralized foundation without a Premine, with a fair distribution, with no ICO, no company, no founders. You know, we need to have a phrase for this, Dan. We keep repeating it. We need to just put some letters there and just say that, like safe it or something.
We'll sound a lot like Bitcoin Maxis, because what Bitcoin Maximus are saying is Premine. If you see all the memes, all the things that Bitcoin Maxis make about quote unquote altcoins, it's the Premines. That's what they attack. They attack the Premines. They say the founders. They say pump and dump, because they understand how rare a Satoshi event really is, and they haven't seen one since. And when you've seen 1,000 bullshits, you get jaded and you just call it all a blanket what it is. But yeah, I think at the end we're going to end up sounding just like them. But, you know, that's because the principles still stand. If you're really fighting for decentralization, they're not saying all technology is bad. They're saying Premines and the way that
VCs.
Web3 has Web VC, exactly. They're saying that's not the way if you want censorship resistance. They get angry because you're saying you're decentralized. You're saying you're censorship resistant when you're not. And they're just calling it out. But that doesn't mean that. I think that gets misconstrued from, let's lump every single token and coin in that category. It just so happens that 99% are in that category, so they get offended when you call out the Premine because you're directly attacking them. And this is mainly for layer ones, right? Like, you know, layer twos are a little bit different. Video games, all these things are different. Obviously, you can run them with a degree of centralization. But when you're talking layer one and you're talking about, we have coin voting and we're censorship resistance, cough cough Premine, that should be called out, because you're misleading investors and supporters of Web3. So.
Yeah, and the other thing is as well that the investors are completely oblivious to this. You know, that they have no idea that this is an issue, and they're just being sold down the river in many ways. And in some ways, it's interesting because I think a lot of the founders have got into this without really realizing that they've done it to themselves. I think they had the best intentions, but ultimately, when you give yourself 20% of your own token, you're going to give yourself the same issues that Dan's just described. And some of the founders actually genuinely know that they're scams. Some of the founders started off not realizing what they were doing, did it, and now they've ended up with a token that they can't get rid of, and they've got to figure out a way to get rid of it without being done by the SEC. So it's just. There's all these different.
I mean, you saw what Ned did. Ned sold it over the counter in secret because he knew what would happen. So, I mean, that's what you're going to start seeing, shady shit like that. It's like a hot potato that nobody actually wants. Yeah. How do you get rid of it? And, I mean, like you were saying, not a lot of people understand coin voting and all the protocols. But it's funny when you go to these websites, because I've studied a lot of these blockchains, and you'll go and they'll have like fucking paragraphs and pages and graphics about the technology and what it does. And then somewhere at the bottom, you'll have almost like a disclaimer you see on the back of a box. You'll see consensus, and they'll give like a broad definition of consensus about like a group of people coming together, but they don't mention the Premine, they don't mention coin voting, they don't educate you. There's not like where on Ethereum's foundation, I could be, call me out if I'm wrong, but where is it that shows proof of stake, coin voting, the effect of the stake that Ethereum Foundation holds, what's that's going to have over the ecosystem? Like at least block one, I didn't like the way they went about it, but they said, hey, look, we have a pre-mine 10% and we're just not going to vote with it. So I was like, yeah, that's still centralized because you're choosing not to be centralized. And then eventually they did vote with it because it was kind of weird. The community was actually begging them to vote because the exchanges have kind of taken over the chain. So you got this weird, like where the hostages are kind of rooting on two different kidnappers because they don't like one over the other. They're like, oh no, you save us, founders. We don't want to be with these people. And so it's sort of like a... Yeah, so I mean that's sort of where we're at, but I mean at least like make people aware. Coin voting is what proof of stake is. Just because you mask it with no election and everyone can be nodes, it's proof of stake. The amount of stake that goes and votes for a certain upgrade is how it works. So on proof of work, it's the amount of hash power, the amount of nodes. Bitcoin it's a bit different simply because they don't believe in hard forks at all. You're never going to hard fork Bitcoin. So if you're ever going to move the protocol, you have to do it on a soft fork, which then it's roughly hash and node count and consensus based. So it's a little bit different there. But in broad terms with coin voting, if you have forks, then you're going to have the ability to take over the chain. And if you have enough of the coin resources, you can control that chain. So that I just think there needs to be way more awareness about this as we start to see coin voting gain dominance, because it really is, especially with Ethereum's market cap.
We need to come up with some more memes like yours, Dan, where we just say a phrase like "Do you die, bro?" Like there needs to be some. We've got to come up with something that just one word that like just describes this whole process. People are like, what does that mean? It's like, well, you can go find out over here. We'll come up with a word. I think it's going to be
And meme it out.
Meme it out. So the other thing here is kind of like you've got these founders and they're kind of not sure whether they're in a scam or not. And so I went to a crypto conference in Eastern Europe a couple of weeks ago, and I got on well with a few of the guys. We were sitting having some dinner afterwards, and there was this newbie sitting across the table from us, and he was asking the guy next to me was like one of the organizers of the show, and he's quite an influential guy. And the newbie was like saying, which coin should I buy? What's the criteria that you look for? Like to kind of any newbie that's kind of interested. And the guy next to me, this kind of influential guy, he was like, well, you should do this and this and this, and just gave him the normal spiel. And I kind of stopped it, and I said, the first thing you should do is if any of the founders have got 20% of the token, it's a scam, you shouldn't buy that coin, right? And the guy sitting next to me looked at me kind of weird, yeah? And then the conversation kind of carried on. And after the meal, I spoke to him and I said, hey, I hope I didn't say anything too offensive there. And he was like, yeah, but I've got a token and we own 20% of it.
There you go.
I was just like, everyone's done it, man. All these DeFi guys, all these guys in the conferences, look out for them. They're sharks. They're everywhere, and they've all got 20% of their own token. And they don't even really realize that it's immoral. They think it's like a normal thing to do, and now they're trying to encourage people to buy their tokens so that they can ultimately increase the market cap and then dump their own stake.
What they've meant to do.
It's a scam, bro. That's a scam coin, But I did it in a nice way. Yeah, but they're everywhere.
It's like it's Web2 crashed directly into Web3, and you had these this spillover that created these mutated weird versions of things that shouldn't exist, where it's you almost have a radio duct taped to your head instead of getting headphones. It's like they're trying to make Web2 work in Web3 when they can't, and it's like you don't have the oxygen there to survive. And you're seeing these weird hybrid morphed, half animal human hybrid type things that shouldn't exist, right? Like these really weird things that shouldn't exist, aka centralized blockchains. It's pretending to be decentralized. It's just a very strange time we're in. But that's what it is when industries morph, right? Like we're morphing into a new industry, so people are going to try what worked in Web 2, and then they're going to quickly realize what actually works in Web 3.
Exactly. It's almost like the norm, and as time goes on, people are going to look back and be like, "We were really doing that. We were really doing that." Yes, we were. Yes, we were.